Hey, happy Thursday, everyone. Welcome to the 7th week of Chakra Strong Resilience. This week, our topic is increasing flow, and that may seem odd or kind of out of nowhere given the subjects we've talked about previously and how they all kind of like build on one another or interrelate with one another. Or you might not even know what increasing flow means or what flow even is. So we will get into that this week or today, I guess. And then part of the items for this week, your assignments, are related to an article and an accompanying YouTube video from the same person about the same topic. So make sure you check those out. They are in the course section folder, just hanging out there by themselves. And that's all the supplemental stuff we have for this week. That's extra that we haven't had in a couple weeks. So flow. Flow is basically how we go through things in everyday life, right? We get into a pattern, into a groove, and one of two things generally happens when we encounter issues with flow. So the first thing is that if we have low challenges, then we get bored with our flow and our flow becomes disrupted because we kind of drop out of things. We're not challenged anymore. We don't see the point, the value, the purpose, or like, I got this, I can stop, but then we don't know where to go from there. Or we have what is called a low skill challenge, which means that you've got a big enough challenge on your hands, but your skills aren't enough to meet it. And then that causes anxiety. So we're going to talk about those two different things and how you can tackle each of them and get your flow, your groove of things back on track. So when we're talking about combating boredom, because maybe you've mastered a skill or a hobby or a subject or something like that, then you need a new challenge, right? And a good example from my life is that my husband always has some sort of random side project going on. And that's either deconstructing and rebuilding his computer, or learning how to build a tube amp, or now we are on to learning about and repairing vintage audio equipment. And he hops from thing to thing because he wants to try it out, see if he can figure it out, and see if he can master it. And then once he has, he's done. He doesn't want to keep going back over it. So where some people might have a hobby that they do for a long period of time, over and over and over, like gardening or a gamer sport that they like, golf, bowling, whatever, it's not something that continues for him. He's done once he's mastered it. So he needs a new challenge because his challenge is low and he gets bored. The other side of that is, how do you find new challenges? What if you don't know where to go from here? What if you don't know what you're interested in? Or you don't know exactly where you're lacking and challenge, you just feel unmotivated and just blah by all of it. That depends for each and every person. And we're kind of at an awkward point right now in the world with a pandemic where it's a little bit harder to kind of like get out in the world and see what you're interested in or what challenges you or what might be something that could meet that need. But it's not impossible. We have the entire history and workings of the world available to us, from a smartphone in our pockets. There are ways to make this work. So the first thing is trying to figure out, why are you bored? What suddenly used to be challenging, or maybe just challenging enough and isn't anymore. Once you've identified that, what can you replace it with? And when you're looking for something to replace it with, try to look for something that you are not going to master as quickly or as easily. something that is going to take more time, more effort, so that your challenge doesn't drop off to being low again pretty soon. If you are a person who's very tactile and hands-on and likes to build, create, or make, kind of like with my husband and his computer audio equipment building, then find something that, you know, meets that need. Do you like to build? Do you like to create? Are you good at any form of art? Do you need to explore a new art medium to, you know, take on? Even if you've never been interested in it before, why not challenge yourself, right? Because the whole point is to combat boredom, which a lot of people are dealing with right now during a pandemic, when all the things that we used to do for fun and entertainment out in the greater world and in large groups of people aren't things so much anymore. If you are not that tactile, hands-on person, maybe you're a full body, active sensory person. Maybe it's learning a new, like a new sport or a new physical activity. So if like traditional, like team sports or individual sports aren't your thing, maybe it's challenging yourself with a new physical activity. Maybe it's switching from strength training to cardio. Maybe it's trying out Pilates now that you feel like you've capped out in yoga. Whatever the case is, find that next thing. And if it doesn't work out for you and you don't find it challenging enough, there are plenty of other things to look from and that you can kind of get to once you branch out just that one step in trying to find the next thing. It can lead you to more things on down the road, which can also be helpful in planning, like, oh yeah, well, after I master this, I'm going after that next. And then you don't have to worry about the next dip and the next feeling of low challenge. So I am neither a full body sensory person nor a hands-on tactile person. I am a hyper-focused, quiet, reflective person. So my jam for the longest time was doing incredibly challenging jigsaw puzzles. And I mean like 1,000-2,000 pieces or more. And ones that were particularly difficult in terms of what picture was displayed when she did, areas that looked very similar to one another. And I would spend, before I was married and had children, I would spend hours and hours at a time doing one. I once did one start to finish in 16 hours straight because I had the time and I was home on Christmas break and I had nothing else to do. But that was a challenge for me. So it could be something like that. Maybe you like different kinds of puzzles or different riddles, mental, challenges in terms of, things that really, really stretch your problem solving or your imagination. And it's just kind of finding, which thing works for you. So on the other side of things is what happens when we have too much challenge and our skills are too low to meet said challenge, and it causes us anxiety. And we're talking about the anxiety that we're in over our head, but not more than we can chew. Insert other cliche here, where you feel that you are not up to the task and you're afraid of failure or embarrassment, and how we combat that and what that looks like. This is pretty common in college because you're at a whole other level than you were in high school. And if you're in graduate school, you're at a whole other level than you were in undergrad. Even though it's still a type of higher education in college, it's still its own very different thing that has its own rules and challenges and its own flow. So when your skills are low, it's finding out what type of skills are low. So is the skill that you need to build, is it something that can be learned by like hands-on instruction or by seeing someone do and then trying yourself? And this works for those tactile hands-on things, right? Or sometimes some of the larger full body sensory things. We can watch, learn, and then do, and then practice and practice until we become better, right? That's, basically how most sports and competitive things work? Or is it that you have a very basic skill at something and you know it's not going to be enough, and like you can see you can get, you know, like this far and be okay, but then past that point to the end, you're like, I don't know. I don't know what I'm going to do once I hit this point. And that's planning and identifying like how far out is, you know, where do your skills cap? The closer they are to the end point, obviously the easier it's going to be for you to build on those skills to get you to the end point. But the lower they are, the more like planning and foresight and forethought you need to give them and to prepare of how you're going to build them so that they are where they need to be by the time you get there. If that takes reading up or studying on ways to do something, strategies, techniques, things like that, that's a great start. If it's having like some mental block, which a lot of people have when they encounter a new or challenging subject, and they just can't get past it. And that happened with me in math in junior high, until a friend of mine who was in high school broke it down for me in a way I could understand. And then all of a sudden it was like, oh, okay, I get algebra 1 now. Awesome. But I couldn't get past that mental block on my own. I couldn't build that skill on my own because I could not wrap my mind around it. But when somebody broke it down for me in a way that I could understand, I was able to like, okay, I get it. I can practice this skill now and learn from my mistakes. And okay, here we are. Now I know how to do this appropriately. That also includes the insight and being responsible enough to know when you need to ask for help, right? And to know when you have a low skill set, which can be difficult to acknowledge because no one likes to admit or acknowledge that they're bad at something or not the best at something, but that's life. That's how it always is. Someone's always going to be a little bit better than you at something or a lot better than you at something. And you're going to be that person for other people too. The world is just an array of different abilities and capabilities on varying spectrums. And no one is ever going to be the absolute best at everything, anything, all the time. So it's okay. It is absolutely okay. The important thing when we talk about resilience, and this goes back to growth mindset too, is always being willing and ready to learn. Learn about new topics, learn new strategies or techniques about an old topic that you already know, learn more about yourself, learn more about the people or the world around you, because nothing is static and everything changes. So that's why a lot of professions like doctors, nurses, attorneys, licensed mental health professionals, social workers, we have a certain number of, and teachers too, especially, have a certain number of continuing education hours that we have to complete to keep our license. And that's because what I learned in graduate school about how to practice social work 15 years ago, some of that's not right anymore. Some of that we've learned more and we've developed better strategies for doing things, or we've done deeper research and found out like, oh, the thing that we thought was causing this isn't, it's actually another thing that's causing that. And if we don't keep doing that continuing education, we're going to be stuck and we are going to be less competent in what we do. And then our skills are going to be low. So we do our continuing education so that we are still competent in what we're doing, so that we can still help. And so that we actually, you know, are effective in what we do. And that's the same in anything in everyday life. It's not like NFL players get to that high level and are like, you know what, I made it to the NFL, I'm good, I don't got to practice anymore. That's not a thing. We know that. And that's how it is in everyday life for everything else too. One of the things that I really want to focus on when we talk about flow is the difference in tasks versus processes. So everybody's familiar with what a task is, right? It's a to-do list. It's a checklist. It's things that you can individually itemize and cross off when they're taken care of. Those things are tasks. So, you know, when you were growing up and you had chores, it's like, okay, when I get home from school, I got to bring in the mail, feed the dog, and do my homework, right? Tasks, checklist, done, cross it off. It's very simple. It's black and white. It's direct. It's not very confusing. But when you're looking at your overall flow of things and how that fits into your life and how that pattern and that feeling competent and comfortable in what you're doing so that things are not chaotic, you need to look, instead of the small things, those little tasks, you need to look at the overall process. And that process is the bigger picture, right, that people talk about. So your tasks as a child of doing those things when you come home, they're tasks for you, but they're part of a bigger process for your parent or your family, right? Because if the mail's not brought in by you, then somebody's going to have to go out and get it later, which may disrupt something else that was going on. If the dog hasn't been fed, then it's whining and begging for food while you guys are trying to eat dinner, which is disruptive, which let me tell you, a disrupted dinner time is one of the most frustrating things for a parent. And if you don't do your homework when you get home from school, when you have that free time, you're not going to have free time later, and you're going to end up stressed out and doing it with a very upset parent with you right before you go to bed. So all of these things work together within other things for things to flow. You might not be able to see it as part of a larger system or process, but it's there. And so the question that you need to ask yourself when looking at getting into a new pattern and flow of things, which happens when we change life stages, right? When we go from high school to college, when we go from living with our parents to living on our own. The way we always used to do things doesn't necessarily work as well anymore. All of a sudden, instead of someone holding you accountable to getting up on time, going to class, you know, remembering to eat when you're supposed to, going to bed on time, that's all on you now. And that might be incredibly unfamiliar. And so setting up a new routine, it's another, you know, segue of flow. You know, it takes some self-discipline, and you got to take some trial and error that you got to figure out. But when you're doing that, it's like, okay, what are the tasks that I need to do and check off my list, either each portion of the day, like in the mornings or before bed, or just every day of the week, to make sure the bigger process of how I'm living my life is not chaotic. It does have flow. It moves smoothly. And if something unexpected does happen, I'm going to have the resiliency to roll with it as it comes and handle it, because my life is not chaos, instead of being completely caught off guard and unable to cope with it, and then everything falls apart. So a good flow, a good routine keeps you resilient and keeps you from being derailed when something unexpected does happen, which it will. You're going to get a flat tire when you can barely afford to have it fixed. You know, you're going to lose your wallet and have to go get everything replaced, which is annoying and takes a lot of time. Those things cause stress. I mean, that's natural. That's normal. And being resilient means being able to work through that stress instead of having it completely derail you and hold you back, set you back, knock you down to the point where you feel like you can't get up. So the importance of flow is a lot bigger than just, what am I doing? Am I doing okay at it? Am I challenged enough or not? Do I need to improve? Those things are all the components that we're talking about. But again, they're part of a bigger, you know, a bigger whole. And they don't operate independently of one another. So it's all about how things connect and interconnect. And, you know, it's that domino effect, the ripple effect. None of us do anything in a bubble, right? Our bubbles bounce around off of and, you know, pass by other people's bubbles, and we all affect one another. So if my flow is off, somebody else's flow might be off too. And it could be that, you know, if you are a parent and you have children and you have a household that you're running and trying to keep together, if you as the parent get derailed, everything can get derailed if you don't have good flow. If you don't have a solid routine and know not only what to expect, but how to handle the unexpected and how to, you know, bounce back from it. So if something is off in my day and I don't get home on time, me or my husband, then other things are happening late, which means kids are going to bed late, which means I'm going to bed late, which means instead of, you know, everyone having a nice family dinner together, which, you know, is still kind of what we try for because that's an important time for families to talk and communicate. You know, instead of that, kids have been fed and I'm eating a bowl of cereal at 10 o'clock at night, right? That's disrupted flow. Now, if it happens occasionally because life happens, okay, yeah, cool, we can bounce back from that. But when your flow is constantly disrupted because you can't manage or bounce back from the unexpected, that's when things start to get really chaotic. And that's when life starts to get disruptive in ways that are all sorts of stressful and anxiety and depression provoking, right? And we don't want that. No one likes to feel incompetent or like they're not on top of their stuff or like they're a hot mess all the time, and that other people might be able to see that and tell. And no one likes feeling that they don't have their stuff together. That's not a great feeling. And so when we don't feel great about ourselves, we're also not very resilient. So that's how this all ties in together as we enter like the last half of this resiliency program, is tying everything together. So this week's assignments, both of them reference back to the article that is there to read and the YouTube video that's there to watch. Your discussion post this week will also focus on those in terms of not only your opinion of like, what do you think, or where could you improve for yourself, but also where can you apply that to maybe someone else in your life, or maybe a situation that is in the past and how it could have been done differently, or how it could help you approach something that you've been meaning to address, but you haven't yet. And after midterms and going to the last half of the semester, that's a really great time to figure those things out, because depending on what midterm grades you got back, you might have to have some difficult conversations with advisors, instructors, success coaches, parents, spouses, depending on, you know, how well you did or didn't do. And we can't avoid those types of conversations forever. So we got a plan for how we're going to address them. We got to build those skills. We got to use the tools that are given to us, which is what this program is all about, and make a plan to move forward. And one of the things we're seeing the most right now in terms of students who are struggling with resilience is that nobody planned on starting college or grad school or transferring to a new school in the middle of a global pandemic. Nobody could have planned for that. So there is a lot of grace there for those people who are, I think we're all struggling with living in pandemic times, but some people are struggling more than others. And I think there's a lot more grace for that spectrum of people who, or how people are coping, because this is unprecedented for, you know, us. And when we look at trying to encourage people who are struggling with it to be more resilient, one of the first things we're telling people is look at your day, look at your routine, especially back in the beginning when a lot of people went to working from home and school from home. You lost the structure you had for that system, for being employed or for being a student. The structure framework you had for that is gone. And it is all up to you to stay on top of stuff and to manage things, especially time, in ways that you haven't had to before. So one of the first things we put out as a coping skill for this big change that's been thrust upon us is creating a routine. And even if you start small and it's a morning routine, right? And the rest of your day, or the flow for the rest of your day will be easier, even if it's not, planned out in a routine to, the last decimal point. So you can build on that though. Once you've got mornings down, try to add in like before bed. And then once you got that down, like fill in the middle. There's no right or wrong way to establish a routine that works for you. You're your own expert. You know yourself best. You know what works for you and what doesn't work for you. You know what's going to help you get out of bed in the morning and what's not. You know what's going to help you go to bed at a reasonable time and get enough rest to be productive for the next day, and what's not, right? You know how much time, like mess around Netflix time you can handle every day and still be on top of your schoolwork. Building routines increases flow, right? It helps us feel confident. It gives us continuity for things. And routines don't have to be super strict. You don't have to be scheduled down to like every 30 minutes, every hour. If general broad routines work for you, like, you know what? I know I'm going to wake up sometime between 8 a.m. and 10 a.m. because my first class isn't until 11. But I will be awake, decently clothed, and caffeinated and or fed by the time I start that 11 o'clock class. That is not a strict routine, but it is part of a routine. What works for you and what helps you find what will build your resilience and get you through is the important thing. Your routine may look entirely different from a routine that you used to have, or from the routine that your spouse or parents suggest. It might look different from anything you've heard or seen before, and that's fine if it works for you. If it's healthy, if it holds you accountable, if it builds your competence and your competence, if it challenges you, those are the important things. In a current pandemic and probably in a post-pandemic world, which we have no idea what that's going to look like either, which brings anxiety, being able to plan and cope and be flexible and adaptable with our routines is going to be a huge skill. And I think that's one of the best things that's kind of come out of this whole worldwide situation is we're learning how to be adaptable in ways we never imagined, right? The amount of innovation that has come out of keeping communities, societies, schools, economies, all sorts of things functioning at varying degrees, but still functioning through all of this, that's because of adaptability. That's because of innovation. It's because of flexibility and a recognition of and respect for the fact that things are not the way they used to be. Even if we want them to be, even if we hope they can be again, they aren't that way now. And what we did in the past is not necessarily going to work right now. In fact, like 99% probably not gonna. And that is okay. A lot of people who have difficulty with transitions or big life changes often struggle with anxiety. Hi, I'm one of them. And the thought of doing something differently just adds to it. It's like, not only are things different, but because they're different, I have to tackle all these other things in my life differently. That creates a level of anxiety that could potentially cause some people to, shut down a little bit or withdraw. Just like with setting goals, which is going to come up later on this semester as one of our topics, tackling any sort of problem like that, especially one that causes a really strong reaction in you is breaking it into smaller, more manageable pieces, which even doing that task can seem absolutely overwhelming. But break it down to the point where it's not. And don't forget that those tasks are part of a larger process. We can take things at our own pace as much as we need to in terms of figuring that stuff out, as long as we're still getting our stuff done. And if we can't, or we're stalled, or we need help, the responsibility is on us to ask for help, or to reach out, or to accept help, and to get ourselves there, because there is no avoiding the world we're living in, where things are constantly changing. I don't know how many of you guys like really clearly remember like the first couple months of the pandemic in, March and April. But as a professional helper on our end of things were changing not only daily with how we were approaching things or doing things, or what our focus was for crisis response. It was changing multiple times a day. And it was like, all of a sudden, like, okay, forget what we talked about this morning. We're not doing that anymore. We got to do this now because this other thing popped up, and it's blah, blah, blah. And this is why my speech increases and becomes more rapid, because that is the feeling that you have when it's happening. That type of urgency, even though we might not be in that spot again right now, we could be again in the near or distant future, or never. We don't know. But having gone through that and learned from it, and being able to ask for help from my teammates and then from me when one of us was more overwhelmed or had more on our plate, is the only way we got through it. And we learned from each other, and we're able to adapt to, trying to lead our various students, through all of these weird different situations that are popping up left and right. So never underestimate the importance of a task to the overall process. One of the things I want people to really think about this week, and it will be one of your discussion questions, is a self-assessment of, are you someone who is more task-oriented, or are you someone who's more process-oriented? Or maybe you're both, but just in different situations. So I used to be a task person, and I love lists. I still love lists. And it was like, okay, I've got things I got to get done, and then, X, Y, or Z can or will or should happen, or I have to have these things before those things can happen. And so it's like, I'll make a list, I'll do the things on my list, and I will feel better because my list is done. But were the things on my list necessarily related to the larger whole? Maybe, maybe not. Maybe I wasted time making a list and doing the list to avoid something else, right? So know if you're a task person, or if you are that big picture process person. That's going to be an important distinction to learn what skills you need to build too, because if you're focused on tasks, you might not consider a look at the bigger picture, which then you may miss some things, right? Or not understand how those tasks fit in, or if you leave one of them out or forget to do one of them, how that affects other things. If you are a really strong process person in the overall big picture, which has its own benefits too, maybe you need to get stronger in looking at the components of that big picture and the tasks that, lead up to it, or the components of it, because understanding those or paying attention to those is going to be really important to understanding, where you're at with that big picture and where you want to be. If you already have a good balance of those two things, then congratulations, you're ahead of the curve. It took me a couple of years under the supervision of someone far more experienced and smarter than I am to get the hang of that, and to remember, yes, this is a task, but it's not just a checklist. It is part of a larger process, and it affects other things. So when I'm doing this task, I have to really pay attention, even though I've done it a million times before, even though I know how to do it with my eyes closed. I have to pay attention so that I don't overconfidently make a mistake and then not realize it, and then the whole process is messed up by it. or is off track because of it. Flow is one of these really complex things that we don't really think about until someone brings it to our attention. We might not think about having a daily routine, or, because it's our daily lives, right? We just do this every day. It's what we do. And we might not think about how that really fits in with everything. And when something does go wrong and throws things off and we feel anxious, or we feel frustrated, or maybe even angry, or sad, whatever our reaction is to that, because things aren't going the way they're supposed to or the way they always do, and I'm having trouble handling that, we might not necessarily really look at that or recognize that as a problem with flow. And that our low skills in handling the unexpected are what have thrown, our flow even more out of whack. Paying attention to those things and recognizing, where you land in that and where you need to improve, and being willing to improve and build your skills will go a long way towards coping with those things and improving that. In terms of the things as college students that are going on right now, a lot of you are first-year students or first-year grad students. And so you are in a new phase of your life. And there are a lot of things that you did not have to consider as much beforehand, or plan for, or take care of yourself. But now you do, because now you're legally an adult and you're away from home. Maybe you're 100% on your own and living on your own. Maybe you're not. Whatever the case, you have more individual responsibility for yourself now than you did before. And did you plan for it? Most of us don't. Most of us are like, I am 18, I am going to college, and I am just going to roll with it and, see what happens and have fun and do what I'm supposed to do while I'm there, and it's all going to work out. Which, legit, and a normal school year, that works for a lot of people. In a pandemic year, more and more people are struggling with the fact that that's not going to work out, because it's not a typical year. For those of you who have transferred here, it's maybe a new city, new state, definitely a whole new university, new system, new instructors. I mean, really everything in your environment is new and different and functions differently. That's a big adjustment. For those of you who are starting graduate school, and this is your first semester of that, is it what you expected? Is it harder? Is it easier? Is it more time consuming? Is it exactly what you thought it would be? And the answers to a lot of those questions are no, because we don't, necessarily know 100% what to expect. So when you enter into those different changes, life stages, flow, routine, the things that used to work completely get shaken up. And it's comfortable to go back to what we know and to go back to old routines that used to be successful. And that's great as a starting point. But don't get stuck in it because it is comfortable and because it is familiar, because your situation is different now. And if your situation is different, your routine, your tasks, your flow need to be different too. That's the adaptability piece. So it can be fine to start with as a base, but you're going to have to adapt it from there. You are not in school 8 straight hours a day anymore. For those of you who are first year freshmen straight out of high school, right? You choose more or less when you get to go to class and the hours that you are not in class in the middle of the day and what you're going to do with that free time. And granted, your options for what to do with that free time are a little bit more limited now, but you don't need big activities with lots of people to avoid doing your homework or avoid studying. You can do that just fine by yourself, with your phone and social media, right? Don't underestimate human beings' tendencies to sabotage themselves because they don't want to be uncomfortable. Again, that goes back to the personal growth module we did a little while ago, is you've got to challenge yourself. You've got to be willing to be uncomfortable if you're going to grow. Growth is inherently uncomfortable because you've never been here before. Dig in, get comfortable with feeling uncomfortable, and problem solve your way out of it, right? And if you don't know how to do that or where to start, or you get stalled along the way, ask for help, reach out. There are plenty of other people. I don't care which phase of your life or college career or postgraduate career you're in. There are plenty of people who have gone before you who can offer guidance, advice, suggestions, even just things to try. They might not work, but at least you're doing something, right? At least you're making the effort. There are endless resources for you to access through other people's experiences. And that goes for all of your on-campus people that you have as resources too. You have TAs, you have your instructors, you have your advisors, you have your success coaches, you might have tutors or the person doing your supplemental instruction. You've got care team. There's people over at CAPS. There's people over at ODI. There are people at student involvement. There's SGA. It's at least a dozen different types of people I named who you can access for support, even informally, of being like, I'm having difficulty getting the hang of this down. You know, what worked for you? Or knowing what you know about me, you know, what are some suggestions you might have? Nothing is going to change and nothing is going to get better or improve if you don't take at least some action to make something better. So if you're bored out of your mind, challenge yourself to work towards something that you don't know. That is difficult, that you know will challenge your skills and your competency and grow them, right? Or at least meet what you already have and give you that sense of accomplishment once you master it. If things seem too overwhelming and stressful and anxiety provoking, get your skills building. We all have skills, whether you think of them that way or not. We all have skills, and those skills can be applicable in a lot of different ways. Find the people who can help you build those skills, depending on what they are. Again, it could be any of the people I just mentioned. A really good place for skill building is the library, and I don't just mean the books. Talk to the people who work there. If you need assistance in just using the library or in research, learning how to research and things like that, man, the people at the library, they got you. They can do so much for you. They are a huge, huge wealth of information that can build your academic skills. If you're struggling in a math course, we've got a math lab. Go see those people, build your skills. Same with writing. Maybe writing is not your jam. It's mine. I'm awesome at it. I love writing. Guess who doesn't? My husband. Guess who finished his bachelor's later in life and had to take English 101 and 102 years after he finished high school English and forgot like everything about MLA and citations. And then all of a sudden you throw an APA, which he's never even heard of, and it's a panic attack. He doesn't know what he's doing. And it's very overwhelming because he wants to do well. He has good thoughts. He knows how to research, but he can't get it down to paper in an academically appropriate way, at least originally. We've got a writing lab for that. Hey, we also have tutors. You can learn those skills, and you should learn those skills while you're here, and you have so many resources available to you, and almost all of them at no cost. Take advantage of that. You're not going to get that really anywhere else in your life outside of college, where almost every resource available to you is free and readily available, especially if you're living on campus and where you live. That's huge. It's a huge opportunity. There's plenty of experience to go around to help everyone build their skills and to feel more confident and comfortable and competent in what they're doing. There's no reason for anyone who's putting forth the effort and who's reaching out and who's connecting with all of us, to feel like they can't do something. It might be hard to do. You might feel like it's a struggle. It's overwhelming. It probably is. A lot of things are right now, even things that used to feel super simple. But you know And if you didn't know, you know now. There are people that can help you and can assist you and make it more manageable and build your skills to where you don't need them anymore. That's the main thing for all of us who are here to provide you with resources and supports, especially for skill building. Our point is to get you, our purpose is to get you to the point where you do not need us anymore. That's job satisfaction for us. That's what we're looking for. We don't want to be, hanging around and looking over your shoulder and holding your hand. You're adults. Bonus of being an adult. You don't need somebody to do that. At least not forever. We all need it at one point or another when we're learning something new. Take the assist. It's not a matter of pride. This is how human existence and learning go, right? So read the article for this week. Watch the YouTube video that goes along with it this week. Incorporate, those into the answers for not only your assignments, but your discussion posts. And as always, this is module 7. So we have 4 more after this before we get to 11. Next week is learning to forgive. You can see it on your screen. And you're going to think that might be a weird jump from what we just talked about this week, but believe me, it all ties together, and we'll get to that then. If you or someone else is struggling, especially because we just had midterms and midterm grades are coming out, and some people are not having a good time with that, if they seem overwhelmed and you don't know how to assist, send them our way. Mention Care Team. You can report a concern yourself. You can encourage them to reach out to us themselves and submit their own concern form. We're here. And there are plenty of other campus resources that are too. So if you need help establishing a new routine or flow or getting back into the hang of things, let us know. Reach out to us. We're here. Also, this Sunday, thank you, Em, for putting that up. Self-Care Sunday is going to be decompression yoga because, again, we all just got through midterms and everybody needs to decompress and relax a little bit and take care of themselves. So you don't need to know yoga. You don't need to be super experienced. If you can have never done it before, it's all going to be focused on relaxation and stress reduction. We're not getting into anything like really complicated with moves or forms or anything. You can bring your own yoga mat if you have one. If you don't, we will provide one that has been cleaned and sanitized. We promise. Bringing your own water is up to you, though, if you should stay hydrated during such an activity. It is at 3:30 this Sunday, and you can come and pick out your spot and bring your mat as early as 3. If it is nice weather out, meaning sun shining, not horribly windy to the point where it's making it unbearably cold, and it's not raining or snowing, then we will be outside on the lawn between Hubbard and Heskett. And that's the plan. If weather is looking like it is not going to be favorable for that, we are moving inside. We've got a room or 2, depending on how many of you guys want to come, in the Heskett Center. And we'll move it inside if that's the case. So it's 3:30 to 4:30, and you can show up as early as 3. You can register at the Self-Care Sunday site that Em had put up, and let us know if you want to attend in person, or if you want to do it virtually, then you will have a video that you can follow along with. And it should be straight link access, no problem, free of charge. If, getting together and with other people doesn't feel comfortable, or, you're stuck at home because you're in quarantine or whatever, you still need a self-care. And I think that is it. Those are all the announcements for this week. So thanks for watching. We will see you next Thursday at 3:30, and I hope to see you this Sunday too.